Hello everybody, welcome to the penultimate day of anatomy. I hope that you are all doing well. I hope that everybody at your house is healthy and that you are hanging in there. We are so close to being done. 2 more classes, you got this. I just want you all to know that I'm very proud of you. I know that this is not how your senior year was supposed to end, and it's been really hard. And I'm just proud of you for hanging in there and sticking with it. Don't mind Chester. But you guys have done a really good job, and just you're almost there. So just stick with it for a couple more days. Okay, so we're going to learn about the menstrual cycle. You may know some of this. Hopefully you learn something new. Okay, so today we are going to explain what is happening during the follicular, ovulatory, and luteal phases of the menstrual cycle. Describe how estradiol and progesterone released by the ovaries are responsible for the phases that the uterus goes through during the menstrual cycle. So remember, today's tasks, these notes, so take these notes. Number 2, watch the Edpuzzle video. It's a short one. I think it's like 5 minutes. Edpuzzle video about the menstrual cycle, and then complete IP number 3. There will be a new reading up for IP number 3 today, so looking forward to that. Okay, so reminder of what we're dealing with here. Side view, you've got an ovary, you've got a fallopian tube, also known as an oviduct, and then your uterus, cervix, vagina. Front view, you've got your ovaries, your fallopian tubes or oviducts, your uterus, cervix, and vagina. So keep that in mind. So put this diagram into your notes as best as you can. I don't know if you're taking handwritten notes or if you're taking computer notes, but this diagram shows you what days different hormones peak. So we're starting with estrogen at the top. Notice estrogen peaks about day 14 of the cycle. Progesterone peaks closer to day 20 of the cycle. Your luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone both peak around day 15 of your cycle. We're going to talk about all those hormones. So, right now, I gotta move my picture out of the way here. There we go. So starting with estrogen. Estrogen controls the growth of your uterine lining during the first part of your menstrual cycle. So in this diagram, this first part here is your period, or what they call like the flow stage. So your estrogen peaks after that, and it starts regrowing your uterine lining, and it's getting your uterus ready to implant a zygote or a fertilized egg if there is one. If you ovulate, and I keep saying you, I know some of you don't ovulate, but if a person ovulates and that egg does not become fertilized, that estrogen will drop off, and that drop is what leads to the shredding of the uterine lining. Progesterone regulates the condition of the endometrium, so it prepares your endometrium for implantation. It also decreases drastically if that egg isn't fertilized. And then your follicle stimulating hormone is what stimulates the growth of your ovarian follicles in the ovary before the release of an egg, and your luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation and the development of the corpus luteum. So, the menstrual cycle are the events in the ovaries and uterus of females. This relates hormones, oogenesis, pregnancy, and menstruation. And you have 3 phases over about 28 days. So this is different for a bunch of different people. But it's typically around 28 days. So first off, you have the flow phase, which is the period. Then you have the follicular phase. At the end of the follicular phase, you have ovulation. And then you have the luteal phase. And this diagram is from the video that you're going to watch. And the video is linked here, but it'll be linked on Haiku. So. Okay, so this diagram shows what's happening with different hormones and with your uterine lining, which is down at the bottom, and then what's happening with body temperature and what happens with your ovarian cycle. And we're going to talk through each part of it. So, if we start with the menstrual cycle, and I grayed out the part that of the cycle that I'm not talking about, and then just realized that this is also down here at the end. This is also day 0 again, so this should be colorful too, but it's not. But this is days 1 through 5 of the cycle, ish, right? Ish, so it varies. This is when the body expels the uterine wall, or also known as the endometrium, that has built up during the previous cycle. After this, your endometrium will build up for the rest of the cycle. So this is when you have ovulated, you've released an egg, and it did not become fertilized, and so the uterus shreds its lining. There is an increase in follicle stimulating hormone because you're getting ready to take that oocyte and turn it into an actual ova, okay? So the oocyte starts to undergo, I think, meiosis 2, and it matures and becomes an egg, and then you end up ovulating. The follicular phase. The follicular phase, I'm just going to do this real quick. This is days 6 through 14, and with the follicular phase, you have a follicle, which is a group of cells surrounding an oocyte, and that follicle steadily releases estrogen. And remember, the oocyte is the egg during meiosis in the ovary, so meiosis 2 is happening. There will be a spike in the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone at the end of the follicular phase, and that will lead to ovulation, which is when that egg gets released out of the ovary. This is a cross section of the ovary, so you have your egg cells, the primary oocytes that will undergo meiosis 2, become egg or become ova. There are different stages of this happening in your ovary, and it crescendos with the release of the egg at ovulation, and then that empty follicle develops what's called a corpus luteum, which will also excrete hormones and then disintegrate. So the luteal phase is when that corpus luteum is releasing hormones. This is days 15 through 28. Your corpus luteum is the remainder of the follicle in the ovary after the egg is released. It releases estrogen like the follicle. It also releases progesterone. So remember, progesterone is really helping that uterine wall build up. Here you see that uterine lining is really building up because you have the uterus is preparing for implantation of a fertilized egg. So if there is no implantation of the fertilized egg, that estradiol, the progesterone will drop, and that is when the uterine lining will shred. Here we go. We have the corpus luteum maturing, disintegrating. So if we think about the menstrual cycle and the path that eggs and sperm take to make a pregnancy, if we think about the sperm starts in the testes, it moves to the epididymis, and that is where it matures, right? And then it moves into the vas deferens, and at the time of ejaculation, it moves out into the urethra, out of the body. If it happens to come in contact, it can move into the vagina, past the cervix, into the uterus, and then the sperm actually go all the way up into the oviducts or the fallopian tubes. And fertilization actually happens in the oviducts. It's a common misconception that fertilization happens in the uterus. It does not. Implantation happens in the uterus. Fertilization happens in the oviducts. So if we think about the sperm and the egg, we have testes to epididymis to vas deferens, urethra to vagina to uterus to oviducts. That's their sperm path. Egg path is much shorter. You have ovary to oviduct, and then it meets the sperm in the oviduct, which then leads to fertilization. So here we have a fertilized egg. That fertilized egg then will move down out of the oviduct into the uterus. That happens mostly, but sometimes that fertilized egg will implant in an oviduct, and that is called an ectopic pregnancy, and that is not a viable pregnancy. So, excuse me. So if this happens, you have started the process of making a baby. Obviously, like, the zygote still has to implant in the uterus, and it still has to go through all these developmental challenges. This by no means guarantees that there will be a baby, but it is the beginning of the process. But let's say female ovulates, there is no sperm there to meet the egg, and so if that happens, there is a period, or you end up with a period, which means that there's no pregnancy. You have shredded your uterine lining. All your hormones drop, all your hormone levels drop. That's why people can feel cranky and irritable and tired during their period, because they are experiencing a drastic change in hormones. Also, like, you're bleeding, and that's not pleasant. Endometrium is expelled through the birth canal. Okay, revisiting meiosis, just a quick refresher. Remember haploid and diploid. Haploid is one set of chromosomes, so sperm and egg are each haploid, one in. A diploid means there's two sets of chromosomes, two sets of chromosomes. So remember, those two sets form, like, most somatics, or all somatic cells. Also recall spermatogenesis and oogenesis. So with spermatogenesis, you end up with 4 sperm, each are haploid. And then oogenesis, you end up with 1 egg, 3 polar bodies, all haploid. Okay, that is it. I hope that you are hanging in there. Watch the TED Ed video, fill out the Ed puzzle, do the homework, upload the homework. A lot of people haven't uploaded IPs, so make sure you do that. I will see you all on Thursday for our last class. Bye.